Welcome to YogiViews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Anodea Sausys. Science had been studying reality for centuries based on the observation of the outcome of an experience once certain variables had been introduced. But in recent years, a discovery had been made that had challenged this methodology. That is, that the very fact of observing an experience alters it. This is a clear sign of the integration of all existing things, a concept that is in the core of the teachings of yoga. A teaching that always indicates that that same integration is happening within each one of us between mind, body, and spirit. In recent years, research done in the area of psychoneuroimmunology, a science that studies the interaction between the endocrine, nervous, and immune system, and that, for example, explains how a person who has high self-esteem experiences positive thoughts and feelings and is usually healthy, while a person who has low self-esteem usually experiences negative thoughts and feelings and is more prone to illness. For yoga, the integration between mind, body, and spirit happens more specifically in some specific centers within the body, actual physical places that are related through a plexus of nerves, through a group of nerves, with certain organs and the functions that they perform. Also, they are related to certain endocrine glands and specific psychic contents. These are the chakras. And I have today the pleasure of having here with us someone who has been studying and explaining this delicate interaction. Anodea Judith. Welcome, Anodea.
Thank you, Antonio. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm happy you're here too. Anodea holds a doctorate degree in Health and Human Services with a specialty in mind-body healing. Also a master's in clinical psychology, and her best-selling books are considered groundbreaking in the field of transpersonal psychology. With over 500,000 books in print and her work translated in 15 languages, Anodea Judith's knowledge had gained her the reputation of being a solid scholarship, an inspiring presenter, and a dynamic workshop leader. Anodea. Now that I have introduced you, sometimes an experience is worth 1,000 words, they say, and I believe in that. And I want to know, as our first question, what was your personal experience, your personal path? How did it start, your yoga path?
I began yoga back in 1975, and I was in a bookstore, and I was already, into reading and researching philosophies of all kinds, studying many religions, and I found a book called Integral Yoga. It was that was the form. It was Satchidananda's branch of yoga. And I took the book home, and there were all these postures, and I put the book on the floor, and I stuck my leg out, and I tried to do it, and I went to the next one. I went, oh, this feels good. And so I was just practicing with a book. And then I thought, there must be someone teaching this. And there was no online to look then, but there was a publication of things that people were offering, and I found a yoga class in the integral form. And it was in someone's living room. There were probably 4 or 5 students in very baggy clothes. There were no mats. There was just a carpet. They burned some incense, and they chanted a little bit in Sanskrit. And we did some very simple poses. And it was like going to church. And I came out with a feeling that I had found home in myself. And I was one of those people that was so gung-ho and excited about it. I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't doing yoga. And I talked about it to all my friends, and they said, well, show me what you do there. So I'd get in a posture, and I'd say, well, it's like this. You want to do this with me? And then they'd say, oh, that's great. Why don't you teach a class? So 6 months after I started practicing, I started teaching. Now, I had no business really doing it, but they didn't have teacher trainings back then like they do now. And it was very simple, and I thought about, well, how, and I knew about the chakras already. I had discovered them. And
From a personal standpoint, you mean, or from reading?
I had discovered them from reading.
Uh-huh.
And I decided to arrange my yoga classes on the lines of the chakras. So I did an 8-week series, once a week for 8 weeks, and we just went down the chakras, and people loved it. And I knew I had found a very profound path to the divine.
That's great. Now, you're already bringing your topic, the chakras, and perhaps not everybody knows what a chakra is, or what in your personal work now. What is a chakra?
Well, there are many definitions, but my definition that I like is that it is a center of organization for the reception, the assimilation, and the expression of life force energy. So just like you have a desk in your house that's your center of organization for your bills, or your cupboard is your center of organization for your food, well, we have centers of organization for different types of activities, different types of feelings, different types of experiences. It's how we really organize our consciousness.
Now, they are also physical places in the body, is that correct?
Yes. Now, the chakras are not physical things in the sense that you could put some on an operating table and say, well, I'm going to cut out your chakra and hold it in your hand, you know, any more than an emotion. You know, you could have fear or you could have sadness, but I can't like take that and hold that in my hand. So a chakra is an energy center that we feel in our body, but it maps onto the human body. It maps onto the human nervous system. And as you mentioned, onto glands in the endocrine system, onto organs, onto physiological functions, onto psychological states, onto stages of human history, stages of personal development. It is really a very primary cosmic map to how the universe is put together and how human beings, which evolved from the world around us, map directly onto that.
They, or some masters say that chakras are the meeting point between the mind and the body, between matter and spirit. Do you agree with this?
I would agree wholeheartedly. And I would add to that, they are the pathway between earth and heaven, going through the very center of ourselves, the core, what in many mythologies is called the axis mundi. In yoga, it's called the sushumna. And that is the connection between earth and heaven. And so it's how we get to heaven in our mortal bodies without having to leave our body.
Tell us more. I'm interested.
Well, yoga is a path. I see the body as the vehicle in which we take the journey. Consciousness is the driver of that vehicle. You decide where you're going to go, right? To me, yoga is the path. Yoga is the way, because that's what yoga is. It's a way of living. And the chakras are the map. So if you're going to go somewhere in your vehicle, your consciousness is going to drive it, but you get out the map and say, well, how do I get here? How do I get to New York? How do I get to Chicago? Well, how do I get to enlightenment? How do I get to understanding? How do I get to truth? How do I get to love? How do I find my power? These are maps to different areas of the human experience.
Where you can find actually the truth, the power, this is the idea?
Yes, yes. In the old text, the chakras were seen as condensing chambers that condensed the energy of consciousness into its various levels of manifestation. So you begin with raw consciousness, which has no material basis, is unlimited, and then you bring it down into light, which is a little bit more formed, what we can see. Then you bring it down into sound, which is the next level down. Sound doesn't travel quite as far as light. It's not quite as versatile, but it's a little more specific. Then you bring it down into air, the breath in the body. Then you bring it down into fire, which is energy. Then you bring it down into water, which gives us movement. And finally, earth, which is the densest and most specific. So the chakras condense consciousness into these different levels so that we can function on this earth plane.
Consciously.
Consciously, yes.
Because
yes.
that's I believe that would be the point, right?
Absolutely.
Consciousness.
Absolutely.
The awakening of the consciousness, or the ability to access a more conscious life.
Yes. And in fact, people are always operating on all of their chakras, but it is a matter of how consciously they are operating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can have an emotion and be unconscious about it, or you can have consciousness about that.
Mm-hmm.
So the chakras are stepping stones in greater experiences and expanses of consciousness.
Now, the expansion of consciousness in a way, and first the consciousness of the self, is something that in psychology is one of the goals of therapy, or the goals of self-inquiry and self-work.
Yes, to find out who you are.
Exactly. And I know that you have related deeply psychology with the chakras. So how do they relate? How do these two paths meet?
Yes, well, they do correspond. What really fascinated me with the chakras, that really I think in single words speaks more than anything else, is their archetypal elements. And just as we are made of earth, our physical body, water, the fluid that goes through us, our blood, fire, our digestion, our energy, our heat, our breath, we are vibration, we are light, we are consciousness. We exist on all of these. The outer world does as well. So the self, which exists within the core, what I call the inner temple, or the divine that resides within the temple of the body, relates to the outer world through the chakras. In that way, they are portals between the inner world of the self and the outer world. Now, when you bring this into psychology, you see that the chakras represent issues and challenges along life's journey that we all face. And they are universal in that way. We all have to survive. We all struggle with our emotional body. We all have to figure out what to do, and we seek to have power and sovereignty over our lives. We all want love. We all speak and communicate. We all want a vision. We dream. We imagine. And consciousness is operating all of those things.
Mm-hmm. And it's moving through all of those things as well.
As well, yes, yes. They are these 7 vibratory modalities, sometimes called the rainbow bridge, which is why we get the colors associated with the chakras. But it's like holes on a flute also. You want to be able to have all the notes. You want to paint a picture with all the colors. You want an orchestra that has the high notes and the low notes. And so in this way, the chakras are an integrative system. They are not about escaping this body to go to some other plane. They are about bringing the divine right down here inside us and letting it shine out through the chakras, through our deeds, our actions, our relationships,
Our thoughts.
our beliefs.
So what I'm getting from what you're saying is that we'd better be in all our chakras, or we'd better be aware of all our chakras if we want to attain a healthy life, a fulfilled or a full life.
Yes. In that sense, the chakra system is a formula for wholeness. And if you apply that formula for your life, it will help to bring you into balance. Maybe you're a person that needs more grounding. Maybe you're a person that needs to lift up and lighten up and move your energy upwards. Maybe you're a person that needs to be more in the heart. So there's this formula, and we look at ourselves compared to that, and we say, where am I out of balance? Where can I come back into balance? And disease is being out of balance.
And I know that you had related greatly this chakra system to, or with some therapeutic uses for it. But before, And because I know what you're talking about, but perhaps not everybody knows. You're mentioning different places. You're mentioning the energies associated and the psychic contents associated with these places. Would you mind telling us what, like, from the lower chakra, from that survival place that you were talking about? Tell us a bit about each one of them.
Sure. Let's lay out the whole system
Exactly.
so people understand what we're talking
exactly.
about. Well, at the base of the spine, what we feel when we sit down is our what's called the base chakra, or the first chakra. It's the foundation of the whole system. And if the body is a temple, well, all temples have a foundation. In yoga, every pose has a foundation. In a doctrine of beliefs, we have foundation beliefs that we build upon. So the first chakra starts it all. It's the element earth, and it relates to our survival consciousness. Our survival consciousness is instinctual. When you're hot, you sweat. When you're cold, you shiver. You don't think about it. It just happens. When you're scared, your heart beats. That's our survival consciousness. It's just reactive. And that's our base level. Of course, we need that to stay alive. So that's at the base of the spine. Once survival is taken care of, the next thing a person turns towards is pleasure. They want to feel good. Now, if you're running for your life, you don't worry about whether it feels good. You don't worry if you're running over sharp stones. You just do it.
It probably doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't
but once
feel
the
good.
danger is over, you take time to look for your shoes.
Exactly.
You want to feel good. So that's the orientation through the feeling realm, which is our emotions, our drives, our longings, our needs, our desires. And they actually move the soul along its path if it's in balance, or they can throw the soul out of its path because we want this and this and this. So, the second chakra, like all of them, need to be balanced. So this is our emotional identity. It's oriented to self-gratification. How can I feel good? The third chakra in the solar plexus is often called the power chakra. This is where we find our own power. And if we really break it down and look at what is power in the yoga sense, the way I see power is mastery. That when you develop mastery in your craft, be it yoga, painting, piano, cooking, acting, singing, that there is a power that exudes from someone who has developed mastery. And you feel that power. It becomes effortless. And true power is being able to do what we need to do in an effortless, easeful way.
That looks simple.
That looks simple. You look at a master painter, 3 strokes, and there's the likeness of Antonio.
Yeah.
And you
Then
say
you go
that,
try to do
that
it.
painter is a master because it looks so easy. And that ease comes from years of effort and intention. So the third chakra gives us our self-esteem and our ego identity, really, which is oriented to self-identification. How do I identify who I am? We go to the next level, which is the heart, the middle of the chakra system. The heart is about love. It's about relationship. It's the element air, so it relates to the breath. Well, when we breathe, what happens? It comes in to the lungs, and the heart beats it out into the whole circulatory system and feeds every cell. We're constantly breathing. We're immersed in this field of air, just as we're immersed in a field of unconditional love. And so the heart chakra is oriented to really love and relationship. And how do we enter into that, into relationship with the whole world around us? And it's a step towards unity. Each time we step up the chakras, we're moving toward oneness. From your body is a very individual body. It's yours for this lifetime. My body is my individual space. It's mine. But we might share feelings. We might do things together. We could share love and conversation and ideas. So we're moving up toward the oneness. So then you come to the throat chakra. What would you think about the throat? It's about communication. It's the element sound, and sound is really a vibration. So ideally in the throat chakra, it's to bring all our vibrations into harmony. Its Sanskrit name, Vishuddha, means purification. So we purify as we come through this bottleneck of the chakra system in order to reach the upper chakras. And that might be purifying ourselves of a substance or toxic energy. And yoga is a process of purification. Then we come to the brow chakra, which is our vision. It's imagination, dreams, the ability to visualize, to remember, and to really see our way, to see the path, to be able to see a pattern. So it's often called the third eye, insight. And then the final crown chakra is the crown of it all. The crown chakra is pure consciousness itself. Transcendent consciousness that is not about anything, but is just pure awareness. At its, ultimate unified with all that is, we are created from consciousness. So it's realizing that's really who we are. We are divine consciousness. And it's consciousness that sees, it's consciousness that speaks, that loves, that takes action, that feels, and that lives in these bodies.
So there seems to be an ascending route for the energy that also, as it becomes more conscious and spiritually aware, it also includes the lower one. So it's in both directions, one direction. How does it go?
I see it as both directions, and that they are both necessary for wholeness. The direction that moves from earth to water to fire to air to sound to light to thought goes from the specific to the universal. It is ever expanding and transcending. So I call that the current of liberation, of freedom. In the Sanskrit text, they call it mukti, which is freedom or liberation. So we get freer and more expansive with each step up. But equally important is the descending current that begins in consciousness and takes an idea and turns it into a vision, and takes a vision and communicates that with inspiration, and takes that communication and brings it into relationship, and takes the relationship and brings it into action, and into moving things about on the planet and bringing things together until we manifest. That's a process of taking the raw energy of consciousness and condensing to more and more specific. So we need to be able to take an idea and bring it into manifestation, just as you are doing with this yoga series. It began as an idea, and you are manifesting it. You're working the downward current, so we can bring something to the world.
Yes, and they are to meet. One of the things that I think it's important, that the beautiful posture, the mountains in Sasana, that it's unfortunately called a downward facing dog, which is such a
I call it downward facing God.
Exactly, because it's how these two currents have to necessarily meet for us to be truly sacred, to be truly divine.
Yes.
Pure spirit, then we wouldn't have a body, and pure body we can't be, because we are a spirit.
No.
Now,
a spirit without a body is called a ghost, and a body without a spirit is called a corpse. They're both something dead. So the integration of those brings us alive. So it's really the life force. It's energy that we're talking about. The Shakti, the divine energy of life, and freeing that up to run through all our chakras and through our core. When it runs through our core, we are connected to heaven and earth.
Can a chakra get stuck?
Oh, yes. Yes, it does. Because the chakras are gateways between the inner and the outer world. And the inner world is the abode of the divine. That we will protect that at all costs. So here's where the psychology comes in. As children are growing up, things happen. Children get abused, a parent dies, they're criticized or scolded, and things happen to us. They happen to all of us. And to protect this vital core, we build up defenses. And those defenses are lodged in the chakras. And they are lodged in the mind-body interface. That they might be, those defenses might contain a belief. It's not safe to be here. They might contain a behavior, so therefore I'm going to hide. They might contain a body constriction. Well, if I'm going to hide, I have to hold my breath. I have to round my shoulders. I have to constrict my heart chakra. And then, if we do that as a child, we grow up with these constrictions in our body, and they're actually constricting the ability of the life force to flow through us. And so yoga, the hatha yoga, the physical aspect of yoga, will stretch and expand some of these places we have constricted and strengthen places that are weak. And the psychological work is to have the insight as to what happened and how we can change our beliefs and change our behaviors.
So a blockage or a blockage in one of the chakras, or is that the same as the chakra being imbalanced? Because I've heard you many times now talking about balance,
Yes.
or is it the same?
Well, it results in an imbalance.
Uh-huh.
Now, the way I look at it is that an organism, when it is threatened or insulted or abused or anything negative, has basically two ways of reacting. Now, this is a bit of an oversimplification, but one way is to increase the energy in order to deal with the threat. Okay, you're going to argue with me? I'm going to get my arguments. I'm going to get my people to support me, and I'm going to build up an army, and I'm going to, increase my energy to deal with that. That's one way. The other way is to avoid and say, oh, I don't know. I don't have what I need to meet this challenge. I'm just going to kind of run away. Now, we do this through our chakras. So what happens if we increase our energy to deal with a threat? It could be an emotional threat, it could be a verbal threat, it could be an energetic threat. If we increase it, then the chakra gets blocked by being too open. It compensates, and everything gets stuck there. It's like a traffic jam, lots of cars, but nothing's moving. So that I call an excessive chakra. A person is excessively focused in their consciousness at that level. It always goes there. A deficient chakra is the avoidant response. It says, oh, I don't know how to handle this. I'm just going to shut down and pull my consciousness out of that center. I'm not going to feel. I'm not going to love. I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to take action. And that would be a deficient. So not only do we want to balance the chakras between them, so that we have a more or less equal flow through all of them, we want to balance the individual chakras between their excess and deficiency.
This is the first part of a two-part show where I am having the pleasure of interviewing Anodea Judith. So I hope you had enjoyed this show, and I look forward to the next time.